Today on Upfront, Donald Trump hedges on accepting the results of the election on November 8th. Next, a top state Republican responds. Plus, Trump and women voters. Can he win them over after multiple women claimed he groped them? I'll ask Senator Alberta Darling, a leader of Wisconsin Women for Trump. Then the view from the House. Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan on the battle for control of Congress and the new challenge that might await House Speaker Paul Ryan.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Upfront. It's a time-honored American tradition with rare exceptions. The candidate who loses the presidential election accepts the results and graciously concedes defeat. But at rallies and at the last presidential debate last week, Republican nominee Donald Trump said he might not do that. It was the latest controversy for Trump, who was still trying to put Wisconsin in play. Trump held a rally in Green Bay last Monday, and his daughter, Ivanka, campaigned in Wauwatosa and Eau Claire on Thursday. We're talking more now about Trump's effort to put Wisconsin in his win column with State Senator Alberta Darling, a leader of Wisconsin Women for Trump. Senator Darling, good to have you back on the program.
Good to be with you, Mike.
So do you think, honestly, Wisconsin is in play, or is it slipping away?
No, I think Wisconsin is in play. There are so many areas around the state that we're getting so much interest in Trump that we usually don't get, like in the Northwest, in La Crosse, in the Green Bay, Appleton area. There's a lot of interest and excitement about Trump. The area that we're having the biggest challenge is the WOW counties.
Right outside Milwaukee.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that when push comes to shove, when people think about November 8th, I think they're gonna go and vote for Trump. The conservatives who are saying, I don't know. You know what's at stake here for the conservatives in the WOW counties would be the Supreme Court. And I think when people think about having 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices appointed by whoever is president, I think that's going to motivate them to go and vote for Trump, because he put some very good candidates out as considerations for the Supreme Court.
You've been a member of this group, Wisconsin Women for Trump.
Yes.
Have you had any pause given the comments that Donald Trump made, given the claims by women who have come forward? Has that given you pause? And what does Donald Trump do, or can he do anything to win over women voters at this moment in the campaign? Well,
what Donald Trump has to do is continue to talk about the issues that are most important to women, and I can go down that tick list. It's about jobs and the economy. It's stability for families. It's about national security. It's about safe streets and neighborhoods. It's about education. It's about daycare. And when you listen to the policy discussions that Trump has, he is on point with what women want. They want a secure future for their children and for their families. And they want our country to be secure. They think national defense is extremely important, especially since a lot of the terrorism has started to hit our streets in the United States.
But specifically about the comments he made, did that bother you?
Of course they did. I think that what was said was indefensible about women. That was 11 years ago, I might add. He's since married, has a wonderful little child. And if you look at his family, and Ivanka was here last week, she was very poised, very bright, very capable. You can't do that well as a person and not have a decent dad.
You've been in politics a while. You've been through tough elections.
Yes.
What do you make of his comments last week, where he seemed to suggest he would wait and see before saying whether he would accept the results of the November election?
Well, what I think he meant to say, he's going to wait to see when the elections are certified. And what you know as well as I do, with the Bush-Gore election, we were waiting for a long time for that election to be certified because of the controversy in Florida. So I think he was pretty bravado about saying, you know, wait and see, but I think what he's saying is he's going to wait to see when the election is really over, when it's certified.
When you heard that during the debate, did that bother you at all when he said that?
Well, of course, it sort of made you go, what? But I knew that's what he was talking about, and that I went right back to the Gore-Bush election, where we went for, I don't remember how many days exactly, but there was debate about whether the election could be certified because of the trouble with the tabs.
The other thing that you've heard from your nominee is is this notion that the election is rigged. It's a theme that he repeats over and over again at his campaign appearances. He's also talked about his belief that there is widespread voter fraud, that there could be, again, the election could be stolen from him. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think there has to be proof of that. I know that there are lots of rumors about voter fraud, and we know that with Kramer just the other day with Veritas, having these individuals stir up trouble.
This is conservative activist James O'Keefe, who has undercover videos
right, exactly.
that seem to at least hint that there could be something that the Democrats are doing to affect turnout.
To stir up trouble for Trump and to get action out for Hillary. But you have to look at our choices here, Mike. We have two choices. And in my opinion, someone who lies about Benghazi to a mother who lost her soldier child in battle there, lied about what really happened there, that's really, really a significant consideration for the voters to say, do we want someone like that in our presidency? I think we want integrity and truth. And Donald Trump has issues, there's no doubt about that. But what he has done is build jobs in the economy. He's an outsider. He hasn't been in Washington for 20, 30 years, and Hillary Clinton has been. And as he said, what have you done in 20 and 30 years? What will be different? And she really hasn't put forward a plan other than to raise taxes for people over $250,000, and that will kill small business in the United States, which would be a disaster.
I want to talk in our final moments about down ballot races. In other words, a lot of speculation about what Donald Trump means to the rest of Republican candidates. Give me your sense of the state Senate. That's your body, 19-14 Republican majority right now. How do you see that playing out?
I see us coming back at 19, maybe even 20. Our biggest challenge will be in the 18th, and that we're working on really, really hard. We have a good candidate who's really there for the people, which is really a theme that's going through. He is an outsider, and he's a person who wants to work for the taxpayers. So I think that's going to be good for us. And we have some really good, exciting news up in the Stevens Point area. We have a great candidate who's really giving Julie Lassa a run for her money. And in La Crosse, Dan Kapanke, who lost in a recall, is having a tough race in there that he could win.
Well, we'll see what happens on November 8th, and we appreciate you being on the show. Senator Alberta Darling, the Republican.
Being here.
Thanks very much. Next, the battle for control of Congress. Do Democrats really have a chance to win control of the Senate and House? I'll be asking Wisconsin Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan next on Up Front. And later, the Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate, what he believes and the role he hopes to play in this year's election. That's when Up Front continues.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.